On March 12, 2015, parents, teachers, students were all up in arms and decided to demonstrate against the effects that the testing assessment piece of the Common Core standards was having on the educational process and the education of the children. As an educator for over 55 years, this passionate plea to stop the destruction of their schooling disturbed me terribly. This rebellion against the effects of this new Common Core testing piece is occurring all over the nation. What is driving this concern? In my era, standardized tests were not used at the level they are today. And when administered, it was for a very, very different purpose. My learning seemed to matter to each teacher, and maybe that's why I still recall most of their names. Somehow, through the efforts of these teachers, I learned to love learning and became a teacher. The educators knew how children learn.
It's very important that you educate children in the way that they best learn. And research has shown us that children best learn by actually actively engaging in the learning tasks. The blocks and the housekeeping areas and all those areas that are very traditional are critical to students' development.
This is when you watch them discover things, because it's more important for the kids to discover it and understand it than it is to just label it or read it. They have to know why and what it is before we expect them to just come out and memorize it.
When I went to school, yes, I'm sure that there were things like Common Core, and there were, of course, goals that the teachers, had to meet for each student. But now it's rigorous, and we have to meet certain standards as teachers. We're held accountable for these standards.
Kindergarten is the grade where the foundation for all further learning is laid. If significant change in the educational process and curricula has occurred because of the mandated Common Core standards and testing, has it really impacted negatively on the educational process? Has there been a real change in a child's education? I had to see for myself. My journey took me to schools in 3 New York cities, 2 suburban New York and Connecticut kindergartens and preschools. And I also interviewed parents, teachers, and administrators, and they graciously agreed to discuss the issue at hand. They opened up their schools to me. So I entered an empty kindergarten classroom, and I was struck by the change. Where were the blocks? Where were the kitchens?
The trend has been that play has gotten shorter and shorter and shorter. We used to do play centers where we would have blocks and kitchen and puppets, and all these things throughout the years have had to go away a little bit.
The new requirements with Common Core, it's all about curriculum as well. We look at every minute of the day and try to figure out where we can maximize that language development. So for example, in recess, we have a system where there's a structured play going on all of the time. Teachers are giving directions, the kids are being told, this is what you do. Kids need to interact while they're doing that, because that's a time to learn. It's not just a time to run around and,
My pen is a piece. Look at this big spot.
Beautiful. I know.
Look at this.
Beautiful.
With the trend towards more rigorous academics, I asked parents about their children's reactions during the first few days of kindergarten.
My name is Kimberly Annis. I have 3 children. My oldest is 5 and just started kindergarten. The first few weeks of school were really tough. Like, he came home, he didn't want to go back. There's not really playtime in his day now. It's math workshop, writing workshop. You know, it's back to back. And he had a really hard time. He goes, I said, well, I thought something was happening at school, and we had to talk about it. And he said, it's just a lot of work, Mom. It's so much work.
I almost feel like that child, that I really have a hard time getting up in the morning, have a hard time completing the day in school.
Before in kindergarten, you gave them time to catch up, to develop and mature. There's no time to catch up now. It's like you've got to hold that pencil properly, and you've got to make those letters properly now, because that's what you need to do in October. And kindergarten is really first grade.
I have said in the last couple of years, I feel like I'm really teaching what used to be first grade. I really do feel that way, because there used to be a time where we would start with colors and numbers. We're doing numbers, but it's assumed that they know their colors. There's no place for colors in the curriculum.
When you're talking about the 90-minute literacy block, the writer's workshop block, the math block, which is an hour, there wasn't any time for the centers.
All centers should be in the room, because that's where the language develops. That's where the social skills develop. And these children, developmentally, they need this interaction. And not all children learn the same. And some children just need to learn through play at that age.
One of my hopes is just that they really get to know each child and how each child learns and grows, because not every child learns the same way.
Kindergarten standards and expectations definitely have changed. I try to, best as I can, maintain what I believe is still an important part of kindergarten, which is play, socialization, meeting the needs of children emotionally and mentally, as well as academics. 4 years old and being expected to read and write. So I do get children that are ready for that, and I think that's absolutely wonderful also, but I still have the children who are 4 not ready to read, so it's a huge gap that you have to balance.
So you could have 4-year-olds till December. They're very young. They're really not, and they're developmentally, their eyes aren't developed, so they really can't track. You're giving them pages where they have to track, and they just can't do it, a lot of them. And it's not their fault.
Dad. And Van.
The social emotional skills that children are learning are underrepresented in the Common Core. And so, unfortunately, they're harder to measure, but they're really important down the road for getting along in life.
At this age, they need some more social interaction. Like he said, even in the classroom, one comment he had made a few weeks ago was, I said, well, who are you playing with? Who are you talking to in class? And he's like, well, I have to raise my hand. I can only talk to the teacher. There's not really playtime like that, Mom. It's different. It is very different.
Who needs this? Who needs this? Raise your hand. No, it's this one. Look at your kids raising this one. Because he raises his hand first. And you want it, you have to raise your hand first.
You have to be able to work with children that have had the ability to be at a 3-year-old program, a 4-year-old program, and those who haven't. And that's what kindergarten's all about. Besides, you hear all about these bullying, in school, cyberbullying. Well, you're not going to teach them social skills, which is taught with centers and working together, you're going to have this problem because you haven't taught them the skills they need in kindergarten.
The parents and the teachers are rebelling. Assessment has kind of moved into the political arena, but unfortunately that has given assessment a bad name, and I'm using assessment different from testing for the purposes of accountability and for teacher pay, which is really unfortunate.
Now, I'm not saying that there's not a need somewhere for standardization, absolutely, but when it becomes the sole focus, and that's what it's become, teachers are teaching to the test.
Common Core standards are all about teaching you how to think.
I got very concerned that if the goal of the Common Core standards is to teach children to think, then the testing piece does just the opposite. It is programming the children to think in one way, the way the test measures thinking.
Learning about thinking maps. Well, I don't want thinking maps to be, everything. Like, are you supposed to learn just about the thinking maps, or are you supposed to learn how to write?
The Common Core doesn't set the curriculum. That doesn't mean that publishing companies haven't tried to devise the curriculum.
Publishers are letting us know how our students are supposed to be taught. But who went to school to be educators? Who works with the children? Who best knows how children learn? You cannot take a script and think every child is going to learn this way and be happy. Sure, you may have your really, really bright ones that can handle it. And those test scores will be wonderful for those. But for those who can't handle it that way and their test scores are low, does that mean that child doesn't know that? No, because if I gave that child a different approach, I bet you they would have got 100 on my test.
Assessment is really important and should help teachers move to the next step of instruction or intervention with the kids that they're working with.
In this era of accountability, statewide, nationwide, we forget what children need in order to learn and develop. When you have children sitting at a desk in kindergarten, first grade, for a half an hour, that's just not good instruction. And teachers know that, but they're mandated by the state or by their districts to follow a prescribed curriculum.
With a lot of the guidance being provided by the Common Core right now, there's still a lot of room where the teacher needs to use her own imagination to advance knowledge.
We have a very talented teacher she'll take the ELA modules and she will create plays, or the kids will create plays based off of what they're doing with those modules. Then she has the kids act them out. They'll write their own plays based off of it. They'll critique each other. A lot of our kids now, language development is their favorite subject.
Just get a book of pictures and just flip through the pages and talk about the pictures. Because they come into school, I can't read. I can't read, I can't write, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that, I don't know. And you don't want them to come in with, I can't do that. You want to come in, oh, I can look at this book. Oh, they're outside. Look, it's a beautiful day, and he's painting a picture, and it must be windy because he's losing his hat. So just having those kind of conversations builds vocabulary and builds story elements.
Educators know what to do. They know what good instruction means.
Who's with the boy at the park?
What happened to the boys' club today?
Rich areas, centers. That's how the brain learns. That's how you retain information. You have to feel emotionally safe and psychologically safe and enjoy your teacher, feel that school's an inviting place, there's something there for me, something to learn. But if you are coming and you're sitting down, if you're an English language learner, if you're a special needs learner, or just a child who learns differently, and sitting for an hour is too much for you, what happens? You start feeling, I can't do this. You have that learned helplessness. You don't feel good about yourself. And then you immediately think that I can't do school. School is not for me.
Irrespective of the school district, the faces of the children lingered in my mind. They were not loving learning as I had. Sure, I remember my friends Mary and Billy cried on the first day of kindergarten. But then, in a few moments after their mother left, they got involved in play, and they couldn't wait to come to school the next day. Today is so different from what I remember.